The speaker for this session is Professor Janet Wilson, and she is the Professor of English and Post-Colonial Studies at the University of Northampton, UK. She is the Chair of the International Research Network Challenging Precarity, a global network. She also edits Journal of Post-Colonial Writing. We welcome you, ma'am. The chair of this session is Dr. Pavan Malreddy, and he has studied and taught sociology, anthropology, development studies, and English literature in the Netherlands, Singapore, Canada, and Germany. He is currently based at the Goethe University, Frankfurt. His current research project focuses on the armed insurgencies in India, Burma, and Nigeria. His research interests include world Anglophone studies, 20th and 21st century literatures, empire fiction, discourses of terrorism, and the intersections of memory studies and post-colonial theory. We welcome you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you all. Thank you, Shruti. And it's a privilege to be chairing this session by Janet Wilson, whom most of us know. And the title of her talk today is The Post-Coronavirus World, Artificial Intelligence and Humans, Machines Like Me, People Like Me.
Very much.
Janet,
I don't seem to be on screen yet. Hear me?
Yes.
Good. Well, I hope that I'll come up on screen in a minute. So thank you, Pavan, thank you, Shruti, and thank you, Dwavedi, for inviting me here, and Professor Rohit Singh and all the team at AURO for bringing us all together in this wonderful event. I want to talk for a minute about the network, the Challenging Precarity Network, which was founded by me and Om and Tabish Kaya and a couple of others 3 years ago in 2017. Since then, we've held annual conferences at the University of Cordova in 2018, at AURO last year, and this year at Tor Vergata in Rome. And in fact, a number of the members of this network are here at the conference and playing a big role. So it's wonderful to see you all. Topics we've covered in our first 3 conferences have included environmental degradation, global warming, the new precariat, precarious and vulnerable lifestyles, systemic economic precarity, precarity in the gig economy, and so on. But none of us dreamed of the devastation of the COVID-19 pandemic, endangering life, threatening our health and well-being, the world economy, and the very future of the planet. An upheaval so far-reaching that now we have to think of and prepare for a post-coronavirus world. This was beyond our wildest imaginings, a case of life overtaking scholarship. But I think our topic and the network were prescient, and all the work we've done up till now we can see as a way of preparing for dealing with the new types of precarity and vulnerability, the new normal that will shape our attitudes for the future and require new answers and solutions. So to get to my paper, in talking about AI and the new post-coronavirus world, I want to look briefly at how artificial intelligence and genetic applied science have already helped understand, manage, and contain coronavirus. First of all, by giving us information faster by new forms of tracking and surveillance. A global AI database company called Blue Dot uses AI-powered algorithms, machine learning, and natural language processing to track hundreds of diseases. And this company warned about avoiding Wuhan on the 31st of December last year, 9 days before the WHO warning. And that's just one example. In urban areas, AI has been used to guide ambulances through heavy traffic. And in China, drones have been helping with surveillance and tracking people. AI has also speeded up drug discovery and treatments that might lead to a vaccine by recreating the virus's genome sequence and building a copy. It took 1 month in China, but several months into 2003 during the SARS outbreak. It can help optimize disease management by decreasing the burden on healthcare professionals and provide faster diagnostic checks, as robots have in China. or being used for measuring temperatures and distributing hand sanitizers in South Korea. AI is also being used in analyzing scans for radiologists to determine which patients are likely to need ventilators. In the workplace, the impact of COVID-19 has accelerated the use of robots and will likely change consumer preferences and open up new opportunities for future automation. Robots are undertaking basic services such as large-scale cleaning, disinfectant, and food delivery. In the US, robots are cleaning the floors of large supermarket chains. A Danish company is using robots for takeaways in hotels and restaurants. Wherever possible, companies are using robots to compensate for social distancing and to reduce the need for staff to come into work. All this extends other research and technology, which before the pandemic struck, was at a stage in which robots was providing support in many different parts of society. Just to take one example, in clinical medicine, in surgical robotics, because of the greater precision possible with machines. And in the fields of assisted robotics and robotic care, robots help the disabled and the aged, and are increasingly being used as social companions. In the COVID-19 crisis, robots are the tools of society. They're functionaries. They're part of the labour effort needed to defeat the virus. A provisional solution to urgent demands thrown up by the crisis. They may assist with recovery from the pandemic in ways that are both beneficial to rebuilding business and the economy, and detrimental to the current workforce and businesses already made vulnerable financially by lockdown. And I'm thinking of the migrant workers in India who've been so badly afflicted that Zubair Ahmed talked about yesterday. Predictions are that in many cases there will be not rehiring once the crisis is over. Workers will not be replaced. Robots will continue to do these tasks because although a robot is more expensive to build and train, once in place, it's cheaper and more efficient than human labor. So we're at a stage that has been compared to the computer revolution in the 1980s and 90s, where there were consequences of redundancy, unemployment, and a reshaping of the labor force with casualization of work and resulting precarity for workers. The question that this paper asks, though, as robots are being integrated into many new areas of society, is how can we prepare for their increasing encroachment into our lives, especially as they take on domestic tasks in areas of healthcare that require robot-human interactions, and especially as the possibility of a synthetic man or a cyborg man-machine integration is ever more likely. This will change our perception of relationships and the definition of human life. How can we imagine a post-coronavirus world served by robots? It goes beyond the common cliches of popular science fiction literature and cinema, of robots as monsters, inhuman machines, replicants, androids, so that we see them more like us, as accessible, companionable, engaging. This has already happened, or it's been anticipated by movies like Battleship Galactica in 2004-9, in which machines are represented as intelligent, emotional beings who can pass for human and so offer more embodied representations of identity than previously. In recent research in the area of assisted robotics, where robots are increasingly used in domestic and healthcare domains, there is a focus on issues of intimacy and communication. Already there are ways of imagining technological life, digitally enhanced personalities, DEP, as we already do with our satellite navigation systems and our cars, where we can choose the accents and the gender and the voice. Personal details in DEP can be adjusted to the needs and individual preferences when choosing human face, a voice, an appearance, and gender, ethnicity. Already in the healthcare industry, the humanoid figure is being constructed with greater human nuance. Can you still hear me? Am I getting through?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good. I can't see anything. Suddenly the whole screen's gone blank. according to an intersectional framework of ethnicity, age, gender, instead of relying on stereotypical roles such as doctor, nurse, medical, or personal assistant, which can evoke polarized sensations of anxiety or hope in the patient. So robots, that is, that think, make their own decisions, perform tasks autonomously, are therefore being evolved towards fully fledged AI. They can be, in some ways, equal to humans and even better than us, as the message from science and technology. They have greater efficiency, superior intellects, powers of reason and logic, as we know from Google DeepMind's AlphaGo's success at defending the 18-time worldwide Go champion Lee Sedol in 2016. But there's an increasing recognition that perceptions of intimacies with robots requires acceptance of them as more than power lines, assistive labours, toys, or unknown threats. One basic question is it possible to trust a machine? Think about it. Contemporary research studies human perceptions and human-robot interactions, measuring responses to robots based on criteria like small talk, emotion, empathy, and gender embodiment. Part 2. Speculative fiction imagines a future in which robots and androids play a bigger role in society, and it invokes the perpetual slave-master binary in relation to the robot's greater powers yet mechanistic servitude. In McEwan's novel, Machines Like Me, People Like You, 2019, is a social dystopia about England in terms of a large-scale failure of mechanization, failed satellite computer systems due to hackers, system errors, bogged down cars, unreliable robot rubbish collectors, and so on. Robots take over not just menial labour, but professional tasks, the work of lawyers and doctors, because of their superior system recognition patterns and greater efficiencies. In this dystopia, the first breed of synthetic man is introduced in the form of 25 humanoids called Adams and Eves. They're seen as the ultimate in consumer electronics. And the hero, Charlie, purchases an Adam. The novel is about the crisis that develops as Adam, sold to Charlie as factotum and companion, has been designed with intellectual powers and a superior moral structure. But as Charlie finds out, Adam is unable to understand the unpredictable business of being human. Hence, finally fails to interact successfully with him. The novel stresses the ambivalences, first of all, of being close to a humanoid, a human man, and the problems of perception. One minute he looks human and he holds his hand to his chin, a gesture of reflection, but then Charlie realizes in the next minute, this is nothing but a clever algorithm. It's not really himself, organically, physiologically. Secondly, the social problems of robots taking over tasks and roles in the workforce, supposedly releasing people for more demanding tasks and further training, or even a life of leisure, but also robbing many of a livelihood. The robot's superior intelligence and brains in McEwan's novel means that they bring economic gain. Charlie's Adam is able to play the stock market and win a fortune in minutes, whereas Charlie would take months to get the same amount of money. Politicians, therefore, treat robots as citizens and ask them to pay taxes because of the wealth they create. But the working classes lose faith in the government who does not care about their jobs, and they demonize and marginalize the robots as strangers, invaders, intruders. The novel then highlights the fact that robots can be treated as human when it suits society and as objects or tools when it's not in their interest. But beyond that, they seem to have no rights or negotiating powers. McEwan's narrator implies right from the beginning that society has not yet imagined robots beyond the common cliches and images from popular science fiction literature and cinema. The message of the novel is that the world is not ready for such a cybernetic revolution. And indeed, experiments are failure, and most of the 25 Adams and Eves eventually disable themselves by the kill switch on their neck because they find it too difficult to adjust. The novel's guru is Alan Turing, the great mathematician and World War I codebreaker, who in fact died in 1952. He is revered in the novel because his work in AI and computational biology has created the algorithms necessary for the human replicant. Turing finally recognizes that this new breed will never flourish because it is unsuited to the human world. And he sums up the clash between a machine model of perfection and flawed humanity. He says, we create a machine with intelligence and put it, and self-awareness and put it out into our imperfect world, devised along rational lines, well disposed to others. Such a mind soon finds itself lost in a surge of contradictions. He asks for a more humane model from future software engineers, better adjusted to the human propensity for error, for our flawed morality, such as, he said, a robot that can tell white lies in order to save face. Charlie, the less than perfect hero, says, to live in the human dimension is, quote, to own a body, a voice, a pattern of behavior, memory, and desire, to experience solid things and feel pain. In the end, the novel plays on a familiar trope, the fear of a takeover by machines, recalling the writings of Mary Shelley, H.G. Wells, and the Czech playwright Karel Čapek, who coined the term robot in 1917. It means serf or labourer, and who described an evolution of robots with increasing capabilities who eventually revolt against their human owners. Adam announces his vision of the future, one of identical beings replicating each other because able to read each other's mind, wired into each other's brains, and through a form of telepathy or instantaneous communication. This, he believes, will create a world of perfect harmony with no dissension or misunderstanding. Quote, connectivity will be such that individual nodes of the subjective will merge into an ocean of thought, of which our internet is the crude predecessor. The metaphor, an ocean of thought, recalls what Teresa Koldova said yesterday about surveillance technologies and governance, and the idea of the good citizen being someone who's willing to forego their privacy. This might be another version of what she called the cannibalistic media, like Instagram, whom we tell everything to about ourselves, foregoing our privacy, shaping a single public image. McEwan's extreme vision conjures up the world of clones in Kazuo Ishiguro's novel, Never Let Me Go. Charlie ends up smashing his robot with a hammer, dislocating its life support system as he feels so threatened by the vision of sameness and cloning, and fears Adam's superior intellect arbitrating over his imperfect and flawed morality. In seeking ways to define the personhood of the artificial being and approach the question of whether computers are worthy of moral respect, equal to that of humans, and therefore whether they can be treated as persons, and this underpins Turing's problem in the novel. The Adams and Eves designed with a perfect moral system are not treated as morally worthy. Several arguments have been mounted. For example, the philosopher Robert Sparrow argued in 2004 that robots should be able to be the object of moral emotions and affective responses like remorse, grief, and sympathy. And they should have bodies and faces with, quote, expressive capacities like those of human form, to put them into a position of being considered as worthy of moral respect. This is an alternative to the criteria of cognitive capacities, reasoning, self-consciousness, and the development of long-term projects, which the historic Alan Turing put forward in 1950, in saying that we can concede that machines can think if they can carry out a conversation. But Sparrow says that even his own new criteria of 2004 are counterintuitive. Robots are incapable of achieving the individual personality towards which such emotions would be oriented. And it's doubtful whether they really feel what they appear to feel, whether it be happiness or pain or something else. So until they can mobilize such responses like the remorse, and Charlie does not feel remorse at ending Adam's life, And until they are given expressive capacities of humans, they will be unable to be considered as equivalent, of equivalent moral standing to humans. However, McEwan's novel shows the distance that science and technology have come from the mid-20th century, when the science fiction writer Isaac Asimov set out the threefold laws of robotics in relation to humans. 1, do not injure humans. 2, obey orders. 3, protect your existence as long as it does not clash with laws 1 and 2. He suggests, this is McEwan, that there is a need to arbitrate humans' treatment of robots, but that the laws and codes still need to be formulated. Turing stresses that Charlie's murder of Adam is a criminal act and says that in the future world of robots, in the novel, there should be some legal reprisal. As we head into the deep economic depression that is predicted in the post-coronavirus future, we might consider these various ethical issues. For example, introducing regulation on the use of robots, of providing legal protection, and questioning or asking how to define their rights of personhood. While in the workplace, we might consider employment rights against the encroachment of robots and protection from the surveillance technologies facilitated by AI, which seem to be moving towards totalitarianism, as Teresa pointed out. These are potential ways to think about the world we live in now and the post-coronavirus world as one we would like to shape. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah. Thank you, Janet, for this glimpse into the moral intimacy, our moral intimacy with the world of robots. And now we have time for a few questions, Janet. You can type the questions to me in the open chat box.
Pavan, it's already there. There are a few questions. You can take 1 or 2 of them.
I don't think these are for Janet. By the tone of them,
I think there's one here, the plight of human capital in the artificial intelligence world. Well,
Yes.
I think it's a very good question, and I mentioned the plight of the migrant workers in India and the coronavirus crisis. And if you think that robots are taking over all the menial tasks of, say, loading trucks or sweeping supermarkets, then it would be a major shift in the whole employment market in a place like India for that category of worker. And then what does that category of worker do? So that's why I say that robots can potentially be deleterious to the social structure unless there are other mechanisms put in place. In the world of the novel, the narrator is very cynical about the fact that robots take over the jobs of the workers, because he recognizes that they have they don't have any fallback. There's no social welfare to cover their expenses. There are no other jobs that they can do. So this is a part of what you might call, would have to be long-term economic and marketing planning to create a world of robot sort of workers that would replace the current the current working class in many parts of the third world.
Thank you, Janet.
Okay, thank you. Is that for me? I'll type a message anyway. Thank you very much.
Yes, it's for you.
Thank you, Janet.
Thanks, Janet.